It's the fall season, so we're going pumpkin spice. This is a rooibos blend. Now, rooibos is an interesting word, but it's also called red tea, and it's made from a plant from South Africa. It's also a really great tea to actually create blends with, hence pumpkin spice. Also, best part, no caffeine. You can drink this any time of the day. For hot tea, it's a teaspoon per cup. I'm going to put a bunch in here, and we're going to call it at 4 minutes. The new iPhones, like many pieces of tech these days, are making a big push towards AI. Apple Intelligence, they call it, complete with properly conversating with you while you ask it questions, editing or straight up generating images, and giving contextual smart information about anything you could possibly want. The problem is a lot of these features are not coming for a while still, making this first week with the Pro version of the iPhone a bit more run-of-the-mill, let's say. But there are some updates that have been made to the core experience that are worth talking about. And one of them is actually skin deep. So let's get to it, because it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? This is my iPhone 16 Pro, week 1. If you've been following my social media lately, you know that I've been on the move for the last few days. Directly after picking up my iPhone 16 Pro in Desert Titanium, I hopped on a plane and flew off to Seoul, South Korea for a work event. So it's been an eventful week, but the smaller iPhone 16 Pro is what I've been using as my main during those flights and during the international travel. Thankfully, I was covered in terms of data and connectivity that entire time, thanks to Mint Mobile and their Minternational Pass. Mint Mobile is actually a channel partner, and I will talk a little bit more about that later. You can check out the links in the description below if you're interested in changing your mobile internet carrier to something that is easier and actually a little bit more fun. Desert Titanium is the new color for the Pro models, so I had to try it out. I have to say, this earth tone right here is properly inviting, and it is definitely my cup of tea. You know what else is my cup of tea? A smaller, easier to handle smartphone, and that's why I went with the Pro. Don't get me wrong, the Pro Max is certainly going to bring a larger display experience that will be effective for work, play, viewing, and all of that, but I find myself doing things a little bit easier and a little bit faster when the phone feels comfortably maneuverable. And while a case might add a layer of safety to the phone, for some reason I'm just really enjoying the phone on its own. The titanium construction comes in that familiar shape as usual, which I understand makes some people believe that the iPhones just aren't all that different from before. And the fact that the display is ever so slightly larger than last year's Pro, these changes are subtle and maybe a bit inconsequential. But there's another change that came this year that is way more impactful, and it's something I've been wanting for a while. That's right, we finally have another button on the iPhone after the silence toggle was changed into a button last year. We're just putting buttons all over the place here, and I'm all for it because I still believe that tactility matters in the experience of using almost any form of tech. An actual click down on this button that Apple calls the camera control does exactly what you would expect. It opens the camera. That being said, it can be used to open other things, including a straight shortcut to the Instagram camera interface for posting stories or other content quickly. And I have to say, it's a shortcut that I've already grown pretty accustomed to, that if future phones for whatever reason took this away, I'd actually be kind of unhappy. Part of the reason for that is that the action button up here in the corner is basically the same as it was before. I predicted last year that the next version of this phone would open up the capability of the action button to do double presses and holds so that we can actually do more things with it. Well, I was kind of wrong. Instead, more apps or shortcuts were added, but you have to select them one at a time, which I still think is a bit limiting. The new functions like immediate Shazam, music recognition, quick translation, and a host of new control toggles are nice, but once I don't need them anymore, I have to go back into the settings and into this very menu so that I can go back to something I would actually use, like either the silence mode toggle or more recently I've been using the focus mode more often. All of this is to say that the action button is, before, let's say, significant tinkering in the Shortcuts app, it's still a one-trick pony for the most part. And that's why I'm glad there's a new button, so that I can still get to one of my most used functions, which is the camera, while the action button can do something else. I'll get to the camera experience thus far in a minute, but I do want to talk about the general everyday experience thus far. It's good that the iPhone 16 Pro continues what is often described as the ease of use Apple has fostered over the years. Even with more recent developments like the dynamic island showing the United app, or visually showing the YouTube video I'm listening to playing in the background. I do applaud how iOS basically has an app drawer now so that the home screens can be cleaner, although I do obviously need to clean them up still a little bit. I do admit though that I miss my live wallpapers from my Android phones to just give that bit more visual flair. Widgets and icons can now be moved to any spot on the home screen grid, which is nice, I guess. But probably the most pleasant small change that I've been genuinely using is the revamped control center, which has different pages for certain functions. If you scroll up, you'll get a widget for all of the media that might be playing. You scroll up again, and there are larger and honestly better looks at key functions like Wi-Fi network, cellular data, and Bluetooth connections. I know that these are further customizable with even more shortcuts from certain apps and just more controls and whatnot, and I have added that little timer here that you saw as I was steeping the tea, but for now, everything that's already on there is pretty much what I would use, so yeah, I find this to be a nice small but significant change, and that's exactly what Apple tends to do each year anyway. Speaking of significant change, one thing that I have had to contend with on the new iPhone since last year is the lack of a physical SIM card slot. Yeah, nothing comes out of this phone anymore, quite literally. Yes, this can be a pain for some people who swap services constantly, but that's why the iPhones are also capable of storing and using many eSIMs. So what's my main one on the iPhone 16 Pro these days? Well, that would be Mint Mobile, who are a channel partner and are here to bring you a great deal. Now, standard disclaimer, I work with Mint Mobile as one of their affiliate partners, meaning if you use the links in the description and in the pinned comment below to try their service for yourself, I will get a commission. It's a great way of supporting my channel, so please consider checking Mint Mobile out, especially if you have been thinking of switching things up with their phone carrier already. After all, Mint Mobile provides high-speed mobile internet for virtually any smartphone, including the iPhone 16 Pro, which is great because their eSIM has been the way that I have connected with the new phone. Their service is also super easy to set up and easy to understand. The app guides you through all of the steps for installing the eSIM, and then the app gives you access to all of the service plans that will work well for you, starting as low as $15 a month. It actually just takes 15 minutes to get started and to ditch your old phone carrier for something easier and cheaper on the nation's biggest 5G network. And even abroad, as I was saying, Mint Mobile had me covered thanks to the Minternational passes, which are access passes for high-speed data, calls, and text that are catered for different lengths of an international trip. In my case, I stored a couple of 3-day passes with 3 gigabytes of high-speed data each, which I could easily activate once I arrived in Korea. Simply prepay for what you need and then fire it up when you need it. That kept me connected during my travels abroad, and it all came from the same easy-to-use surface. Again, you can check out Mint Mobile for yourself using the link in the description and in the pinned comment below. And not only are you getting a great service for your mobile device, but you're also helping out my channel, and that's greatly appreciated. Thanks to Mint Mobile for being a channel partner. Now, let's get back to the iPhone 16 Pro. It's almost a cliche now to say that the iPhones are simply great cameras, and in the case of the iPhone 16 Pro, we might be seeing an evolution in the way we experience that camera. And I'm not even talking about the AI photo and video editing tools because most of those things aren't even here yet. I'm talking mainly about camera control and photographic styles. Starting off with the camera control, which I already talked about a little bit earlier, it's a dual capacitive and actual button that opens up a new way of adjusting different settings within the camera interface, ranging from things like an EV slider, a zoom wheel, or even the photographic styles themselves. After the last week or so using the button certainly for launching the camera app frequently, I've also been trying to get used to it as a shutter button and as an adjustment dial, a little bit like what you would use at the front of a big camera for like the ISO or for the aperture settings. But when you think of it in those terms, the main issue I have with it is the positioning. I can see where Apple is coming from because like if you have it a little bit higher up here, it's symmetrical to where the power button is on this side, but when you're holding your camera usually to just press the shutter button like this, your finger is still kind of far away from the actual button itself. It's a little higher than where I would expect a shutter button to be on even other camera smartphones. Overall, the result is a camera control that is a little bit out of reach for one-handed use. Also, the slight press that is needed to engage the menu for then sliding can often be enough to take you out of the prime positioning that you originally got to get the shot in the first place. All these little micro adjustments due to the nature of lifting and then sliding the finger, it would mean readjusting from time to time. And that's enough to kind of take you out of the moment. What I end up doing usually is I open up the camera and then I go into the slider control in the camera control, find the setting that I would most likely want, and then I bring up the phone to actually get the shot. And also, I found myself pinching the phone like this with my thumb and index finger, and then using my middle finger to not only do the slides, a little bit uncomfortably I will say, but also to hit that shutter button. It's also in this position that I found myself doing a lot of vertical shots, whether photo or video, and that ended up being the most comfortable way for me to actually use the camera control more frequently. The other way would be turning the phone around and getting a rear camera wide-angle selfie, which I got quite a few of while I was in Korea. Just being able to come over to the bottom half of the phone and press that shutter button, that did end up being something that was effective, and I was able to do that no matter which hand I was using. So with all of that said, pros and cons, I do think that this is a step in a new and good direction. Ultimately, a net positive. I mean, for so long now, we've relied on touchscreen controls, and it's refreshing to see a new way of operating a smartphone camera without the need of accessories or attachments. I give Apple some credit for that. And even though this is not a real-world camera test because I'm waiting for some extra accessories to come in before I do that dedicated video, you're seeing a lot of photos and videos. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And I have to say, this is still a camera setup that is there for serious creators. The triple camera setup on the rear gets a bump up in megapixel counts, but also has a proper telephoto lens with now 5 times optical reach, which originally was for the Pro Max last year. Also, with 5 times optical reach, you're going to be seeing a lot of zoom shots because I was able to use it very effectively from our surprisingly close seats at a Linkin Park concert, yes, in Seoul, Korea. I watched Linkin Park in Korea. But what also was rather fun are the aforementioned photographic styles. To put it simply, it's like using real-time LUTs, and that is a fun way of changing up the mechanical and creative aspect of taking photos. Some new styles have been added alongside the ability to actually tweak the actual look or the intensity of the style. And when it's put on the camera control, this just makes it easy to change up the look of any scene while shooting. It's actually a lot like the LUT button on my Panasonic S9. It's just a lower barrier of entry into photography experimentation. And of course, you can apply the styles in the editor after the fact, but then that kind of begs the question, is this a photographic style or a filter? Now, as for the AI features, I'm saving my thoughts for them once all of those features roll out. Things like erasing things in the background, whether it's people or objects, to clean up a photo. Those are still things that are still on their way. I do know that there is a great audio cleanup feature that is already available, but that'll be something I dive into more when I do my real-world camera test in which the phone becomes the main camera. And besides, as it turns out, I needed to have a setting turned on in the audio page for the camera settings so that I was recording spatial audio. Now, that kind of makes sense, but I do kind of wish that it was just recording audio in general that I could then put into the audio mix feature inside of the Photos app. But here I am with the spatial audio feature on, recording a video on the front-facing camera, and I'll just isolate my voice. That way we clean up some of the ambient sounds that I have in the background. Currently playing a bustling cafe here using Focus, my usual productivity app. After 1 week with the iPhone 16 Pro, I find myself in a familiar place. As someone who gets to try a lot of different smartphones, it's almost a reset of sorts to come back to the Apple ecosystem and enjoy all the conveniences that entails. I still find myself feeling good about using AirDrop. For example, getting the social media content done on my MacBook, AirDropping it quickly to the iPhone, and then I post from there. I still appreciate things like Apple Watch alarm syncing. After all, the Apple Watch is a great silent alarm for the mornings. And I also now have linked up my parents into an Apple family so that they can get more iCloud storage on their iPhones. And simply, I'm just letting the phone be what it is without me diving too deeply into customization that isn't really there in the first place anyway. As we usually say when it comes to iPhones, it all just seems to work. But this is an experience I've had with every new iPhone, and it's familiar enough still right now that it feels more like deja vu rather than something fresh. Perhaps it's good then that Apple Intelligence is right around the corner so that I can further dive into something seemingly fresh, and you can look forward to my follow-ups on this phone and the greater iPhone lineup by subscribing to my channel. But with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again today. Thanks to Mint Mobile for being a channel sponsor. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody. Oh, and actually, enjoy a few more photos and videos to round out this week 1, because I want to share more from my wonderful trip to Seoul, Korea. All right, enjoy your tea, everybody.